What's going on, guys? We're coming back with our first review show of the season. Go for the NFL Week 1. It feels nice. It feels nice to actually have something established and to know that not only is it established, but we have something to look back at. And we talked a lot about leading up to this point process and making the right decisions and not looking at results so much in contest selection. And now we can review that process, not to just be a 1 week thing, but what we got right, what we got wrong, where we got unlucky, and these type of different macro thought processes. Because I do think some people will overweight week 1 in both directions. And so hopefully we can provide the people with some good intel tonight.
Oh, yeah, we will try to help clear everyone's heads after week 1 of Sunday football. Yeah.
And clear our own heads as well, because that's the beautiful thing I like about review shows is it doesn't matter how big of a tout you are, doesn't matter if you've got $1 or $1,000. If you're brave enough, people put the results on the table at the end of the night, no matter whether they like it or not. There's ways to track anyone that plays DFS. So no reason to be afraid to take some stands and do things a little different as long as the process makes sense. So looking back at week 1, what's the one thing that made sense that held true to you?
If you're not paying up for one.
If you're not paying up for what? Oh, I don't think maybe we lost you. Right when you was about to make a good point too.
Oh, sorry. Did my mic just cut out real quick?
Yeah, I did. You're back though. You're about to make a brilliant point, I could tell.
Okay, so my thought was the adage I have when building lineups. If I'm not going to pay up for one of the top stud tight ends, so a Kelsey and Andrews, something like that, then pay all the way down. And that was basically right this weekend. If you didn't have Kelsey, even Andrews didn't do that well. So if you didn't have Kelsey, you were better off just playing any minimum salary guy. 3,400 and down, you basically all got 1 to 2 points or zeros. Even the other pay-ups, Kyle Pitts didn't get 5 points. Kittle was out and didn't get points. Ertz barely got 8. So none of the other pay-ups other than the real studs like Kelsey worked out. So it was better to just normal strategy. Just pay down at tight end and you're good.
Yeah. And another thing I like to do is when everyone is all over the chalky running backs, I like to pay up for the wide receivers because I know that's different. And it paid off for me this week because I paid up for guys like Devontae Adams, guys like
Justin Jefferson.
So even when you fail, even when I failed on a guy like Aaron Jones, which I definitely failed, he only got 10 points. It's well, you're so different that as long as you hit some of these, as long as you hit one chalky running back and still can afford to be different, it's not about the price exactly. It's about we always say the process. So it's Christian McCaffrey and Justin Jefferson were around the same price. But when I thought everyone was going to McCaffrey, I just went to Jefferson.
Yeah, exactly. McCaffrey was definitely the chalky running back play, one of the chalkier plays altogether on the slate. So not having him is a huge leverage, and playing someone in that same price range, especially at a different position like receiver, is also good leverage. A lot of the major builds I was seeing this week had a lot of more high-end running backs, and then you're either paying down for your Romeo Doubs or your Jahan Dotsons or something like that, and trying to fit in Kelsey and all the running backs. But I believe the lineup that won the Millie had more of the mid-range running backs, and then, like you said, paid up for Jefferson, paid up for Chase, paid up for stuff like that. Yeah. Still had Barkley, still had Chalky Pittman, still had Kelsey as your pay up tight end. But instead of going down to the 3K receivers and making sure you had those stud running backs, he played more of the 5K, 6K running backs, your Barkley, your Gibsons, guys like that. And then he was able to still play Jefferson in that lineup. He was still able to pay up for, there was one other receiver, Pittman, who was a smash.
Devontae Adams also got there.
Right, Chase had a good day too. Like a lot of the top end receivers had their day. If you had, like Jefferson was the guy you needed to hit a tournament with 40, but 33 from Adams and 31 from Chase did not hurt you.
I had all of them in different iterations.
Yep.
I had Jefferson, Adams, and
you were heavy on that Swift Lions correlation, which if the Lions defense does anything, probably works out for you because Swift had a great day.
Yeah. Well, and Swift.
But again, Swift was one of those guys in that he wasn't one of the 7K or plus running backs. So like if you play Swift and Barkley, or like I believe it was Barkley Gibson were the two that in the winning Millie Maker, but like playing two of those non 7K plus running backs that allowed you to get one or two of those guys. And like the Millie winner still had Dubs as a Dubs Jefferson mini stack. So like you have that mini stack in your stuff. It's a good play. You have a lot of good lineups this week.
And I did, but I just want to talk about that from like the stuff I did wrong too, but I will mention, and I ran kind of bad with Swift because Williams had 2 touchdowns in that game, both at the 1-yard line. If Swift did get like a reverse that I was hoping they would call a pass because it was close, but they did call it a run. It was like a pitch option. And it was a beautiful play, by the way. St. Brown is going to quickly become one of the best wide receiver blockers in the league. And I do think that translates to DFS because we'll see him on the field, even in the like tight, goal line packages. And it's those little edges that matter. Even getting 0 points from Bellinger, I think, was a good play because the Giants did end up scoring a garbage touchdown to a tight end on the same type of process play that I thought they might, where it's like they get close with Saquon Barkley, so make sure Barkley's in your lineup. But if they do a bootleg fake, it's almost that Mercedes Lewis kind of effect with Aaron Rodgers. You're going to look for your big tight end. They did it. They just threw it to Chris. What was his name? Chris Morak? Something like that. I think that's how they pronounce it. Chris Morak instead of Daniel Bellinger. And, had I hit on that, the day could have been different.
Yeah. I mean, I had the same thing. I paid down at tight end, and I got a 0 from Herb Smith in the Minnesota game, even though that Minnesota game had a lot of points. It just all went through Justin Jefferson that day. It's like, okay, unlucky. But I do think the pay down tight end is the right move because, like, even when you get the 0, it allows you to fit all these guys getting you 30 points. And, like, you cashed in pretty much all your lineups, and you have a lot of good a lot of your lineups would have probably done well in pretty much any tournament you put them in.
Any tournament, right. Now, my highest lineup was 183. But that's another point for me, Gov, and we'll get into some of your lineups and some of your thoughts, too. But one of my things is, like, when I'm right, I want to really be right. Like, I want to hit the home run. I don't want to just hit a little floor right. Like, so you'll see my lineup's 177, 183. Like, that could easily been 120, 130.
That sounds like my lineups this week.
I'll have those weeks. Those weeks are coming.
Yep.
A luck box thing for me is Michael Thomas, I believe, had 1.7 points going into halftime for the Saints. It's just he caught 2 touchdowns in the second half, and they used him like a tight end in the goal line, and he caught everything. Like, he was like a Mike Evans type, where he wasn't burning anyone down the field, but once they got in close and started to make that comeback, he was the guy that Jameis trusted in the red zone area. And we might see that flip next week with a guy like Adam Thielen, where, like, Jefferson's been the yardage guy for Kirk Cousins, but if you look at last year's stats, Thielen has actually been his preferred target in the red zone. So, like, some of that luck box stuff has to happen for you to have a big week. Like Gov was saying, like this week was big for me, but I did make some mistakes. But again, the process was right. I mean, I took a cheap, uh, Green Bay Packer, which paid off with Romeo Dubs, right?
Yep.
But if Christian Watson catches that 90-yard touchdown,
Yep.
then
Or really, the 3K receiver to play was the guy from Arizona, Dortch.
right, Greg
If you
Dortch,
switch to him, but he doesn't do that much better than Dubs with 8 points.
right,
The fact is, your process. You paid down for the lowest defense. You paid down for the lowest tight end. You had a pretty well-known punt play that was a Min K guy, so that you had the money to fit in the lineup. Most people were doing that, but then you did the right tournament process of, if most people are doing that and then paying up for the pricey running backs and getting Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey, then you building tournament lineups where you're paying up for your Jeffersons and Adams and stuff like that, much better. That's how you get to the top of a tournament, getting a little different, not being stupid with it, still playing good plays, but getting different.
Well, let me break this down a little bit, and we'll forget the names on the back of the jerseys, just the thought process before we move on to your lineup and some kind of like week one takeaways that we can look into week two with. So everyone wanted to play Jalen Hurts, right, in cash. And I thought, who is the cheap guy in a tournament that plays like Jalen Hurts? For me, that was Marcus Mariota. Not that I thought like he could have the same ceiling or the same floor, as Jalen Hurts, but playing in a tournament, I thought he could have the same ceiling as Hurts. And without that fumble, like who knows what would have happened on the last day? He could have had a really good day. Swift was basically Kamara was up there. You had your CMC types that were up there. I just felt like he was too cheap. He was like 6,800, and he had a Kamara workload. So I was like, I'm getting the same kind of production with a cheaper price. And a lot of people don't know this, but Ben Johnson just took over the offense. And so the offense was going to look different, and they were going to do more exotic motions. And I knew that. Aaron Jones, although he didn't get there, I think it's still a good play, and I would go back to him. And this play was like my Derrick Henry play because I thought I'm not high on A.J. Dillon. I still think in the red zone, Jones is the guy. I just think Jones has so much potential. And everyone thought that like Derrick Henry was sneaky. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just stack Jones and Jefferson and play this game. Because I knew everyone would be on the Cardinals and KC game. And once all those wide receivers got rolled out, I was like, unless you're playing a Greg Doach, unless you're playing an Andy Isabella, who didn't get it, but like one of these cheap guys, unless you think that game's going to like stay competitive with those type of guys, I wouldn't play it. So, and I didn't think it would. And then Zach Ertz came in injured. I'm just like, I don't think they have the firepower to keep up. But here's one of my mistakes, but I think the process was still good. I went with Kyle Pitts in this lineup because I thought Kyle Pitts had the same like yardage upside as Travis Kelce. Like when you looked at like who could finish ahead of Travis Kelce, Pitts was like number one. Like,
and it looks good with a Mariota stack. Like now you have your Mariota, Pitts, bring it back with Michael Thomas. Yeah. And that's a good thought process on that. Yeah. But like I said, it's like,
well,
if he didn't stud you, then you really just needed to pay down at tight end, which, yeah.
And one thing we know about Dable coming over from the Bills is he was big on pushing for Stephon Diggs to be traded. He kept saying, like, I remember him saying, if you want to develop Josh Allen, we need to give him weapons. If we want to develop Josh Allen, we need to give him weapons. And so, like, that just kept ringing in my head. If you want to develop Daniel Jones, we got to give him weapons. And I kept thinking, who is their best weapon? I don't give a damn about his chalk, their best weapon, Saquon Barkley. Okay, plug him in because we knew he was talented, and then the Lions. Everyone's playing Hurts, so whenever there's a chalky quarterback, I'm going to play that defense if they're cheap, and the Lions just so happen to be minimum. Now people know I'm a Lions fan, so they're going to assume, oh yeah, and there wasn't bias. There always is bias in DFS, but.
To be honest, like that one lineup you have probably could have shipped if you. I can see like one pivot after the weekend hindsight. This one lineup that you have that has 175, where because you already had Romeo Doubs to go with Jefferson, I don't think you needed Jones, and then you can again get off the pay up running back that everyone else was playing.
Yeah.
And now you would have had that money in the flex because I'd move Barkley up to the running back spot. So now you have Aaron Jones's 6,700 in the flex. You could have switched out.
I could have played A.J. Brown and won a lot of money.
Yeah, you could have played A.J. Brown and had that on the other side of Swift and then gotten off the Lions defense to like the 2,400 defense Steelers or the 2,600 defense Dolphins that smashed.
Or even just play the Lions defense to save the money if I needed to. And just
well, I mean, I'm thinking of a scenario where, like, I'm assuming this lineup probably spent all the money.
Yeah, I did.
So in my scenario, if you're going down from Jones to Brown, you have like $400 to get off the Lions. So you can go up to like I said, the Steelers at 2,400 were the smash one. So like you could have gone to them and like just that there. That's 24 points from the defense. And you're turning Aaron Jones's 10 into the, what did A.J. Brown have, 29?
Yep.
So you're getting 19 points. That's like adding 40, like, so 24, 19, 34. Like you're adding 43 points almost. That puts you well over 200. 250 won the millie, but like 215 normal weeks will take down a lot of tournaments. And like that small pivot, which again, you didn't need to completely stack that Minnesota game with a Jones, Doubs, and Jefferson on the other side. So getting off the chalkier Jones would have been the play. So, and playing anyone in the flex from 6,700 down.
But here's another good point for you guys to remember as well. You can do it if you want, if it helps you process. And this is where it should be salt and pepper to taste in terms of what you prefer. Excuse me, talking about salt and pepper. I guess I got too much pepper in the nostrils. But what I was trying to say was, if it helps you process, it's one thing. But in hindsight, is always dangerous. And people say, well, if I would have put this in the millie, I would have won the millie. Or, it's like, if that's not a contest you normally play, to me, that's just an exercise of punishment or torture. Like, that's just a version of a torture mechanism. But if you're using it as a health mechanism to overcome a process error or overcome a bias, then I could see where you would have some hindsight bias and you work through it.
Again, I just know from playing multiple tournaments. This is nothing specific to the millie or anything like that. But like, the way I would build a tournament, like I said, I think you may have overstacked the Minnesota Green Bay game for not having the quarterbacks on one side.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably would have gotten rid of one of your Green Bay guys. The one I probably get rid of is the expensive chalky one. And that's really the worst play in that lineup. So like it makes my process sort of makes sense in my head, but you also have a lot of that where you basically have that 3-man stack of that game.
Yeah.
So like, I would like to know your process on why did you get on having all that and 3 guys from that game without actually stacking
it? It's because I viewed the Lions defense. I was afraid to play I thought Jalen Hurts was a rare exception where it's like either I'm going to get a lot of sacks from a cheap defense, right, and it's going to go really bad for the Eagles, or Jalen Hurts is going to get all the rushing upside, and he's just not going to throw to anyone, and everyone's going to play AJ expecting this outcome, and he's just not going to get there. Similar to what happened, actually, to use an example, what I thought would happen was how everyone was on Mike Evans, or not Mike Evans, excuse me, Mike Williams, thinking like the Keenan Allen thing was going to work. And the only reason I bring that up is there was even more reason for it to be work because Keenan got hurt, and still Williams only saw, I think, 4 targets on the day. So sometimes the preferred targets do fail, and it's just like if I'm going to play the defense, I might as well take a huge stand, which was incorrect. That was an error in my process. But Gov, did you want to break down any of your lines? Did you want to tell them what you got right, what you got wrong? Like, where do you kind of want to steer this conversation next?
We honestly sort of been talking about, because I took week 1 and sort of played it kind of chalky, thinking, you know what, I'm going to play it a little chalkier because I feel like in week 1, this is the week most people get kind of crazy because there's not a lot of info. So if I try to play it kind of chalky, it might work out. So a lot of my builds were high-end running back, mid-range to cheap receiver builds that didn't end up working out because only like one high-end running back actually went off in JT. McCaffrey didn't really go off. Eckler really didn't go off. Chubb had his touchdowns vultured. So, like, playing your Swift, playing your Barkley, playing other guys than that was the way to go. And then, like, other than Dotson, like, Dubs did not do enough. Cobb did not do enough. Watkins and MVS in the mid-range. Juju did not do enough. So, like, those were the builds that I ended up having. So, like, some of the guys like Kirk and that got there, but Trevor Lawrence stacks didn't. So, like, that's how my day went. I should have probably flipped the script on the build. Instead, I just got different with the same build with my players. So instead of playing McCaffrey and JT in a lot of lineups, I had a lot of Chubb, I had a lot of Henry, both of whom had their touchdowns stolen from, like Hillard had 2 touchdowns where Henry could have had 2. Chubb had both of his touchdowns stolen by Hunt. So, like, things went wrong with me trying to get different at running back and still building the same way. And then none of my real cheap mid-range receivers that I used to get different hit either. Got nothing from MVS. Patrick Mahomes throws 5 touchdowns. I get nothing from MVS, basically.
But isn't that the beautiful thing is, like, when you could look at something and be like, well, Derrick Henry probably got vultured on a couple touchdowns. It happened to Nick Chubb. But it's like, that happened to Swift too. So it's not about whether I was right or wrong or the points at the end of the day. It's identifying, yeah, I got lucky here, I got unlucky here, and both things can coexist, whether you win or lose. Like, there's still luck involved, whether you win or lose. Michael Thomas getting 2 touchdowns, and, you know, that was what made me green, in that lineup. Like, and it's those small micro edges, sure, but like those are the edges that make you the most money. And so Gov's day is coming. His process is fine.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that I really need to change in my process. Maybe since I do build multiple lineups, I should think about making a differentiated lineup and flipping the script. Like, if I see that the builds for the week and the chalky builds for the week are coming out running back heavy, build a wide receiver heavy lineup like you were doing, like all of yours are, where you pay up for Jefferson and Chase or pay up for Jefferson and Adams or something like that. I did have some, like, another thing that hurt me this week was, like, I had a lot of Herbert, and most of that went with either Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, who, sad for Keenan Allen being hurt, and then Mike Williams also not having a great game, even though that was a solid game with the Raiders, but Devontae Adams was the man to have.
And see, that's the only reason I played Jared Goff, is because I knew a lot of people would be on the late quarterbacks, and I'm like, how do I get a little bit different and still try to predict a game that I think has a high upside for points, where I think both coaches wanted to beat each other. Like, remember, they had some bad blood in their last meeting last year.
Yeah.
And whenever you have bad blood and then you meet the next year, you're gonna see some big outline performances, and I thought we saw those, and I hit on some of them like Swift and missed on others like AJ Brown. But that was the reason for that play. What's the one thing that you learned this week that you think will definitely apply to next week? And then what's also the one thing that we're gonna overreact to? Not us specifically, but like the industry as a whole.
Well, the one thing I think we're going to overreact to is probably the floor is going to be the floor games that some guys did have. There were a few big name guys that had their floor game. Christian McCaffrey had a floor game.
Yeah.
Somehow he doesn't even get 15 touches. That's ridiculous that a healthy Christian McCaffrey doesn't get 15 touches in a game where you need to be pushing the whole time. Like certain things like that. The running back flips where like Aaron Jones technically only had like a 30% of the run of the rushes, and that AJ Dillon actually outsnapped him. Same thing with Burkhead over Dameon Pierce. Same thing with James Robinson over ETN. Like there were a lot of backfields that were thought to be either 50-50 or 60-40 and ended up being 60-40 in the other direction.
Of those backfields, which one do you believe that any of them or all of them? Like which one holds true? Which one was not? Like, do you think AJ Dillon's just gonna outrush Jones most weeks?
I don't know, but that's the one that I feel like could be the most volatile. I really don't want to trust that. That like LaFleur really will probably do that and flip those guys out. I feel like eventually on the Jags, it'll even out and one guy will prove to be better in the next week or two. And he'll just end up starting to get the 60-40, 70-30 split. It might end up being Robinson like it was week 1, but I'll wait and see on that one. And then like Pierce is a rookie. He probably will get out snapped but he's been playing well. So there's no reason he can't win the job over Burkhead and be the 15 to 20th touch guy when Burkhead goes to the 5 to 10 guy. But if they're both at 10 to 15 until then, and Pierce ends up 3 to 5 carries or touches lower than Burkhead on these weeks, it might happen.
Well, you can attest to this because we spend a lot of times in the same channels, literally in the same channels, same communication wave, and our thought processing as well. But I was saying all week that I didn't believe in David Montgomery, and I thought Khalil Herbert had a chance to overtake him.
There's another one, yeah.
I mean, Montgomery looked terrible. I think he had 15 carries for like 20 yards or 25 yards. It was like 2 yards a carry, and they were just like.
I'm willing to give him a pass because I saw that game. They were basically running on water. So, okay, David Montgomery isn't Jesus. That's good to know.
Right. But I just want to make that point. I'm not saying that Khalil Herbert's a good play. I was just saying based on his praise for that week, he was a good play. Like that's where we got to be careful not to over evaluate week 1 where it's like, oh, Aaron Jones sucks now. I'm playing 100% AJ Dillon next week, or Saquon Barkley is a god. I'm playing 100% Saquon, even though he was chalk in week 1. I don't give a damn if he's 100% owned. Like there are still mistakes to be made in either direction. What's the one thing that irritated you? Player, concept, maybe contest. Like what's the one thing that irritated you? Like a mosquito bite. That you're now waiting to itch in week 2 though. Like it was an irritation in week 1. They're disappointed, but now you're itching to play them in week 2. Is there any players, any concepts you're ready to kind of build out? Like what are you waiting to do? Like
I am locking Christian McCaffrey. I'm hoping everyone poo-poos him all week and he comes in low owned. And I'm hoping that this will be the week where it's like, okay, so now I'm going to get low owned McCaffrey. And this is where he just does his normal thing, gets his 20 to 22 touches, Because he barely had 14 touches last week. Still had a touchdown. But he just couldn't get the volume to do what he normally does otherwhere with only 4 catches. He went 4 for 4 catching the ball. So, like, if this week he does normal McCaffrey, gets 10 to 12 carries, and also gets like 8 targets, now he's going to have a 25, 30-point day. I'm a love sitting there looking at 30 points from McCaffrey, especially if he's low owned.
Yeah. Can I give you a couple of mine? I'm
Sure.
100%. You tell me if it's good or bad. This will be fun. I'm 100% interested in going back to Allen Robinson.
I could see that. Yep.
In fact, I'm interested in not only going back to Allen Robinson, but stacking it with a Stafford stack, just because everyone saw him fail on prime time. And yeah, he failed, but he might have failed against one of the best teams in the league. It's similar to the Lions. People want to make all the same old Lions jokes, but the Eagles might just be the best team in the East. So, like, sometimes these things flush themselves out. I'm going to go back to Kyle Pitts. I believe Kyle Pitts saw 10 targets in week 1. Now, he only caught 4 of them, but if Pitts is anywhere close to reasonably priced, I'm going to go back to him.
It's not a horrible one.
And if you're looking for a quarterback that like has a lot of moxie that you might want to pay up for, Jackson only had 4 rushes. Now, this would be an interesting your philosophy on Gov. Some people believe that he's not going to rush as much this season because of the contract negotiations, and he wants to just be more conservative. But then some people will say, no, it was just a matchup. They didn't need him. I wouldn't be afraid if it was your style to pay up for a guy like Jackson. The problem is I don't usually pay up for quarterbacks. So it's probably not my avenue. But if I was going to, Lamar Jackson, only rushing the ball 4 times and still being as productive as he was an impressive, performance to see.
Yeah, he would be probably pretty solid. I admit I have not done a first look for week 2 yet, so I haven't looked much at the slate. But
I haven't either. But that's why I think it'd be interesting because these are my initial thoughts without being, jaded by the lineup builder itself. Another guy I think we should look at is Mike Williams, especially if Keenan Allen sits. Because Mike Williams,
he just had a bad week. He would have been the second one. Like, I kind of hope people are poo-pooing him because if Mike Williams is big next week, then that'll be amazing.
Yeah. Who's the one guy that had a really good week 1 that you think is going to disappoint expectations? Not even disappoint like his team. Maybe his team still wins. Maybe he still has a decent day. But what's the one guy that's getting served up too much caviar at the moment? Where you're like, not quite yet.
I don't think there is anyone. Because, the 2 guys, there were only a few guys who really, really smashed this week. And they were guys like Justin Jefferson, who you expect to keep doing that. There's no question on him. There were guys like Jonathan Taylor. I expect him to keep doing that. There's no question on that. I mean, I guess really Pittman. Can Matt Ryan keep it up where Pittman, who had a smash week, still has a smash week? He could totally just again, Indy could win. Taylor could look good. But now Pittman, instead of having a 30-point day and that, all of a sudden Matt Ryan looks like crap and Pittman looks like he did last year with Wentz.
Yeah.
That would probably be the one.
Yeah, I would just say I think Jefferson's still a good play, but I do think people will tend to overstack the teams that did well. So you might see too much Kirk Cousins and Jefferson together with whoever they play. Or
I believe they play on Monday night or Sunday night next week.
Maybe See, that proves to you that I haven't cheated the system. I really haven't.
I can't honestly tell you if that's right or wrong. I believe they play on an island game this week, though.
And I know we mentioned Mike Williams, but I do know he plays an island game. That's the first Thursday night football game with Al Michaels and Kirk Kirkpatrick because they played the Kansas City Chiefs.
Chiefs Chargers on Thursday night, correct? Yep.
Which is a brilliant reason I brought up guys like Pitts and even would consider just paying all the way down at tight end this week because without a Kelsey, the Andrews love, unless you're gonna get different with that kind of Raven stack, I just think I don't, if Kittle plays, he could be sneaky. I think there's just a lot of good sneaky plays where a lot of the higher price, what I imagine to be the higher price tight ends, are going to even be more condensed with Kelsey being on an island this week. Any other big takeaways you want to give to the people?
Don't overthink things. Like, it is okay to trust your gut, especially these first few weeks, but don't overthink things in your process. It should come somewhat naturally to you as you're doing this. As long as you're following the numbers and not, how do I say not being stupid without being stupid about it? It's weird. Because when I say don't be stupid, that actually just sounds stupid to me. So I'm really...
Simplicity.
Yeah. Keep it simple. Yeah. Keep it simple.
There used to be an old adage in my mathematics course when I was in elementary school that would say, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, the kiss. I've seen the kiss.
Yeah. Well, it can be the kiss of death in DraftKings if you overthink yourself.
Yes.
One of the things I would add to that is I listened to the Gilcast with Davis Manick and his boys, and the reason I bring that up is because they're friends. You should do this for fun. You should do this with friends. Jan DeWin talked about the one thing he thought that DraftKings wasn't doing enough of is promoting that they have leagues. That they have a lot of social elements. And instead of doing a fantasy 12-man league, if you guys don't have the time, do a league with 4 people. Do a 3-man with 3 of your college buddies or your colleagues and stuff like that, and have fun with it. And because one of the biggest mistakes I think people make is 10 minutes before lock, they jump into the lobby and they're like, well, this is a good contest, and this contest might overlay, and this contest might overlay, and then you end up spending $10 more than you would have spent.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter the results. The results and my point don't matter to this. I want people to not only gamble responsibly, but I think to Gov's point, to think responsibly.
Correct.
It's not just to be smart. It's to think smart. Think ahead. Don't just luck box your way into being smart.
Double check, review your stuff.
Yeah.
I don't build these lineups on the fly. I have time to look at them, manicure them. I would build a lineup. I would see something I have 2 Packers and a Minnesota guy, and I'm not stacking the game. And then I might change that lineup to do something like that.
Well, the way I look at it, Gov, if me and you built a log cabin, and I built it with my hands, I put so much work into it, and I don't wake up every morning and at least feel the wood and enjoy the polish and enjoy the wood stove and enjoy the house I built, then what was the point? So a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to review my lineup. It sucked this week. But it was your work. So you showed dedication. You spent all week dedicating podcasts, dedicating to projections to people you trust. Don't disrespect that process, even if the results weren't 100% your way. It would be just saying, oh, I'm out of gasoline. I'm just going to leave this car on the side of the road now. We wouldn't do that. So don't do that just because.
That's why there's the adage we have: Process over results. You don't forget the process just because the results didn't go your way.
Exactly. Now, is there anything else you want to mention in terms of a review for week 1 that would help people for week 2?
Let's see. No, I think we'll give them more of that when we do a first look later this week. We do another breakdown on Friday like we did.
Yeah, we're gonna do
I will say I am pumped for this Monday night football game, and depending on how Denver looks, they might end up being big this weekend too.
Man, I wish they were on the main slate this week because I wanted to play a ton of Jerry Jeudy.
I think they are next week, so you might get your chance.
But I got very lucky
games in a row.
I got very lucky. This is where we'll end because my scores look good, so I just want to be transparent. I got very lucky that CeeDee Lamb wasn't on week 1 main slate because if that game was on the main slate, I would have had him over Chase. I would have probably had him over Devontae Adams.
He would have been in the price range of those guys too, so yeah.
So that's just an example. I still love CeeDee, and I'm just glad I get to play him in a different week. But I definitely would have made that in my process. That for sure would have happened. But all right, guys, thanks for joining me. I want to get you out of here. I know you want to travel for the game and travel safe. Be safe. Guys, we're going to be back with you. We're going to be traveling along to week 2, and hopefully we'll have some process then as well. We might even do some picks and previews and that kind of thing. We got a lot of stuff down the line. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for supporting.
Remember,
again, like and subscribe.
Yep, sub, comment down below. I try to read what I can. I can read German too, so watch out, spam bots.
Yeah.
All right. So don't be let's not be stupid. But
yeah,
I am reading the comments, so subscribe, talk to us when you can.
In whatever language you can. Let's just try to keep it clean.
Oh yeah.
All right. Talk about keeping it clean. Keep your money clean. Good luck. Be smart. Emotional bankrolls as well. Take care, guys.